Longhorn Steakhouse is a great restaurant to visit as it has so many different options on the menu. But like any restaurant with a variety of offerings, some dishes are a lot better than others. While choosing can be overwhelming, our list will help you make a worthy decision. When you go to a steakhouse, there are a lot of different options to choose from. Should you go for a filet mignon or a ribeye? But one thing you probably don't want to order if you're looking for a meal that's actually going to be tasty, a chicken dish. That's why we would never suggest ordering the Parmesan-crusted chicken from Longhorn Steakhouse. Though the chicken is described as fresh and juicy, to us it seemed dry and lackluster. And when it comes to flavor, there just wasn't any there. Even the addition of crusted, crispy Parmesan couldn't make up for the state of the chicken in this dish. Think about it. You can always go to a restaurant that specializes in chicken if that's what you're looking for. But when you're at a steakhouse, you may be better off sticking to the stuff that the place actually focuses on. But even if you're looking for a chicken dish at Longhorn specifically, this is not the one to go with. Here's another meat menu item that you should probably skip over entirely the next time you find yourself at Longhorn Steakhouse: the cowboy pork chops. The thing is, cooking pork chops well is not as simple as it may seem. It takes a talented cook to ensure that the pork is cooked enough that it's safe to eat, but not so much that it becomes a dried-out, joyless piece of rubber. Unfortunately, at Longhorn, you're gonna have to worry about your pork being overcooked when you order these chops. The pork chops also taste like they barely have any seasoning on them at all, and they're a bit too dry, which makes just chewing them a task you'll quickly grow tired of. We do like that they use bone-in pork chops, as that enhances the flavor and keeps them juicier than they would be if they were boneless, but all in all, these pork chops still get a no from us.
Oh, no. No. No, 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 no.
Look, we don't like when people copy others and then try to take the credit. That's why we were annoyed right away at the Texas Tunyon. If that sounds slightly familiar but off, that's probably because you're thinking of the bloomin' onion. This dish was served at Outback Steakhouse restaurants and it's now become widely popular, but Longhorn Steakhouse wants you to know that they are not going to be one-upped, which is why you'll now find the Texas Tunyon on their menu. The Texas Tunyon is basically a bloomin' onion in that it's a fried onion that's served with dipping sauce, but the bloomin' onion is so popular because of the fact that it looks like a blooming fried flower. The Texas Tunyon doesn't look like that at all. Instead, it's just a bunch of fried onion pieces. Sure, anything that's fried is going to taste good, but the breading has no flavor and this dish isn't anything special. And since it doesn't even have the appeal of the appearance, we definitely wouldn't order this again. When you go out for steak, it's probably because you want something that's kind of special. You may not make steak for yourself at home all the time, so it's an opportunity to indulge and order something that you probably don't eat on a regular basis. That's why we wouldn't recommend ordering the chopped steak the next time you're at Longhorn Steakhouse. Instead of coming out as a whole piece of meat, this steak is actually made from ground meat. So yes, it's basically just a hamburger patty. We will admit the herby sauce with mushrooms and onions that is smothered over the chopped steak is pretty delicious, but it only serves to distract you from the fact that the meat isn't that good. If you're not really a steak person but still like red meat and you want something simple, the chopped steak may not be a bad idea. There's nothing like a good salmon fillet for dinner. It's one of the healthier protein options out there, and if it's cooked right, it flakes flawlessly with your fork and tastes absolutely amazing. Unfortunately, you should know that you're not going to be getting the best of the best when you order the Longhorn salmon. This is about as basic a salmon fillet as you can get. The signature bourbon marinade is sweet but doesn't really have any flavor besides that. Additionally, you're at risk of getting an overcooked fish, and there's nothing worse than flavorless dried-out salmon. The fish comes with rice that's also lacking in flavor, and you can get another side like steamed broccoli. In the end, you have a lackluster dinner that you could probably make very easily at home. Look, we know that some people absolutely love chicken tenders, and if you fall into that category, we support you. But unless you're ordering for a child, there's going to be better options on the menu than plain chicken tenders. Unfortunately, that's exactly what you're going to get at Longhorn Steakhouse. These hand-breaded tenders are exactly what you expect: mildly tasty, vaguely juicy, and served with a side of French fries. Frankly, we think chicken tenders are boring. While they don't taste bad, they're nothing special. If you want to revert to an old favorite, though, you won't be disappointed when you order chicken tenders from Longhorn. When we first saw the firecracker chicken wraps on the menu at Longhorn Steakhouse, we thought they looked promising. First of all, who doesn't love starting off with an appetizer? Second, they're advertised as being spicy and cheesy. Sounds like a dream come true. The chicken and cheese is all wrapped up in a fried flour tortilla. Unfortunately, they did not live up to our expectations. For one thing, they're not that spicy. If you really like spice, you may want to ask for some hot sauce on the side. We also found that they were mostly made of cheese. There wasn't that much chicken in the mix. What we did like, however, was the cool avocado lime dipping sauce. It was light and refreshing, but it would have tasted even better if the chicken wraps were actually spicier. There's nothing like a rich chocolate dessert to finish off a nice meal. But sometimes restaurants go overboard when they're in their test kitchens, and they come up with dishes that are totally off the wall. That's the case with the Chocolate Stampede from Longhorn Steakhouse. The name Chocolate Stampede sounds slightly ominous, which makes sense when you see the monster of a dessert that comes out when you order this. There are six different types of chocolate in this cake fudge frosting number from any diabetic's nightmare. That's paired with vanilla ice cream, which just adds to the ridiculousness of this dessert. Longhorn's website says that it should be shared between 2 people, but let's be honest, you may need a whole party to finish this dessert. While yes, it does taste good, it's also way too rich and way too much food. It may be fun to photograph, but chances are you're going to throw half of it away or drive away from the restaurant in a deep sugar coma you may never recover from. You've been warned. If you're looking for a way to get your dinner off to a good start, you may consider a soup as an appetizer. One soup is bound to catch your eye at Longhorn Steakhouse, and that's the loaded potato soup. Think of it as a loaded baked potato in soup form. The potato soup is topped with shredded cheddar cheese, bacon, and scallions. Though the quantity is small, there's a lot of flavor in this dish. You may not be surprised that there's a lot of sodium too. Way too much for just a bowl of soup. So even though it tastes good, we can't rate this dish too high. One dessert that we like slightly better than the Chocolate Stampede is the Strawberries and Cream Shortcake. While this dessert is pretty rich, it's lighter than the Chocolate Stampede because it's focused on cream and fruit instead of chocolate. However, that doesn't mean that this shortcake isn't indulgent as well. It's got layers of moist and fluffy yellow shortcake, vanilla cream, and deliciously sweet strawberry jam. Fresh strawberries and syrup are then poured over the top, adding even more flavor to the mix. We like that, though this dessert is sweet, there's enough tartness from the berries to balance everything out. What do you do if you're at a steakhouse and want to take advantage of the specialties but still want to eat a relatively healthy and fresh dinner? Well, if you're at Longhorn Steakhouse, you can always order the 7-pepper sirloin salad. Is it the healthiest salad in the world? Probably not. But considering that you're going to get a healthy serving of protein and lots of fresh veggies, we think it's still a solid option for those who want something that's going to make them feel their best. The grilled sirloin is tasty and pretty juicy, though we don't think it was as good as the normal steaks on the menu. But the diced tomatoes, croutons, and blue cheese crumbles really bring the rest of the salad together. Even though the sirloin is on the heavier side, it all balances out with the fresh veggies. Now we're getting into some of Longhorn's specialties, the meat. You may go to this restaurant because you want steak, and a lot of it. If that's the case, then you can't go wrong with the Longhorn Porterhouse. It's the biggest steak on the menu, so if you're feeling really hungry, this may be the best selection for you. It's a combination of a bone-in strip and a fillet, so you get all the juiciness and flavor of the bone while still enjoying the tenderness of the fillet. What's not to love about that combination? Of course, a lot of a steak's flavor will come down to how you want it cooked. Generally, experts will tell you that medium rare is the preferred doneness of a piece of steak, but it all comes down to preference. What most will agree on, though, is that a well-done steak is a waste of money. If you're going to order an expensive cut of meat, you shouldn't ruin it by putting it on the grill for too long. No matter how you decide to order your steak, the Longhorn Porterhouse is a great option for those who are really hungry. While ordering a steak might be the most reasonable thing to do when you're at a steakhouse, that doesn't mean you're locked into that one option. If you're looking for something that's a little more casual, you can always opt for the LH Burger. It's a good standard option if you don't know what else to buy.
I would like to buy a hamburger.
I would like to buy a hamburger.
It's not damburger, hamburger.
I'm not saying dimburger.
This is just your average everyday burger, but we think that Longhorn does a pretty good job preparing it. Lettuce, onions, tomatoes, and pickles freshen up what's otherwise kind of a heavy sandwich with a beef patty, cheese, and bacon on top. It all comes together between 2 buns for that perfect burger experience. This burger is definitely better than your average fast food burger. Plus, you can personalize it by removing certain ingredients and even picking what kind of cheese you want on top. There's something about a T-bone steak that's just instantly appealing. Seeing that huge hunk of meat with the bone still intact will make you want to grab a knife and fork and dig in. And when you order the fire-grilled T-bone steak from Longhorn Steakhouse, we don't think you're going to be disappointed. It's a combination of a strip steak, which is nice and fatty with amazing marbling, and a filet, which is known for its tenderness. Therefore, you're getting the best of both worlds when you order this steak. Plus, keeping the bone in the steak ensures that it stays nice and juicy during the cooking process. Again, this is a steak for someone with a big appetite. Steak leftovers definitely don't taste as good as eating a steak fresh, so we wouldn't recommend this menu item unless you have a big appetite. If you do, though, you're in luck. If you're looking for the best salad on the Longhorn Steakhouse menu, then you can't go wrong with a grilled chicken and strawberry salad. Even though this salad contains chicken and not steak, we still think it's a top option at this chain. It's so fresh, and it's actually pretty healthy. It all starts with crunchy field greens that are served at the peak of freshness. Then the salad gets a sweet kick with the addition of grapes, strawberries, and mandarin oranges. Candied pecans and a raspberry vinaigrette also add an unexpected pop of flavor. Finish it all off with some feta, and you can see why this salad is such a hit. While we don't love most of the menu items that feature chicken at Longhorn, we think this one is a winner. Now, eating ribs at a restaurant doesn't always sound that appealing, but a fear of being messy shouldn't stop you. It may not be something you want to order on a first date, but otherwise the baby back ribs at Longhorn Steakhouse definitely aren't a bad option. These slow-cooked ribs fall off the bone as soon as you bite into them. You also have the option to get half a rack or a whole rack of ribs, depending on how hungry you are. We love that they offer different portion sizes for those who may not want a ridiculously huge serving. If you're a fan of dry rub ribs, though, you're going to be disappointed here. The ribs at Longhorn are absolutely smothered in barbecue sauce. The sauce is delicious, but it won't be everyone's thing. Anyone who loves saucy, smoky, and super tender ribs, though, are going to go crazy for this menu item. One of the best Longhorn seafood dishes is the Red Rock Grilled Shrimp. When you order this menu item, you're going to get massive grilled shrimp. Sure, pretty much any shrimp is good, but the best part about this dish is the smoky tomato butter that it's glazed in. The tomato gives the shrimp a bit of sweetness, but also some umami at the same time. The butter infuses the shrimp with fatty richness, and the smokiness brings it all together to make something amazing. While the side dish options for this shrimp are pretty lackluster, we think that it's still a great choice if you love seafood. The shrimp are plump, moist, and simple enough that most people who like seafood will enjoy them. When you want a dessert that's delicious and creamy and not overwhelmingly rich, then the Caramel Apple Gold Rush at Longhorn Steakhouse is for you. We do think that this dish is decadent, but they're not overdoing it. It's a baked pastry that's filled with Fuji apples. It's then topped with vanilla ice cream and Jim Beam caramel sauce that has a depth of flavor that really takes this whole dish to a new level. It may be simple, but all those individual components come together perfectly. While we found some of the other dessert options really overdone and over the top, this one seems more reasonable, like something you would serve in your own home. Keep in mind, this thing is a whopping 1,640 calories. Buying a good steak isn't always about size. Sometimes instead, it's about flavor, marbling, texture, all the other components that make a great steak great. If that sounds like it's what you're looking for, then you should probably order the ribeye. Longhorn Steakhouse says that this is their juiciest and most flavorful steak because of all that fat marbling you'll find throughout the entire cut of meat. All that fat gives you tenderness, but most of all, it gives you flavor. That's why all this steak needs is to be cooked well for you to fall in love with it. This steak is 12 ounces, which means that you're going to get a healthy portion of food. At the same time, it's much more reasonably sized than some of the other steaks on the menu. If you're the kind of person who would prefer quality to quantity when it comes to your meat, then the ribeye might just be your go-to Longhorn order. There are some classic dishes that you'll find at a ton of restaurants, regardless of what the fare is. One of those dishes is French onion soup, and you're going to find it at Longhorn Steakhouse too. But the difference is at Longhorn, it's one of the best items on the menu.
Here, have some French onion soup.
Sure, it's rich, but it's totally worth getting a smaller entree so you can enjoy the wonders of this starter dish. It's your classic onion soup made with beef broth, but it's absolutely smothered with cheese. Parmesan, provolone, and melted Swiss all come together to create the perfect melty mess to top your soup. There are also full pieces of toast that come in the soup. You can break these pieces up after they soak in the broth for a while, and yes, it does taste as good as it sounds. What do you do when you want to order an appetizer that's going to please the entire table? If you love cheese, you have to order the white cheddar stuffed mushrooms. Mushrooms may not sound like they're one of the most delicious items on the menu, but when it comes to this app, they definitely are. These mushrooms are stuffed with herby garlic cheese, then they're topped with a Parmesan crust. If that weren't already enough cheese for you, the whole dish is then served on top of a 4-cheese blend. When all of those creamy flavors come together, it really is fantastic. With so many menu options at Longhorn, it can be difficult to make a decision, especially when everything sounds so good. If you find that you can't choose between a seafood dish and a juicy tender steak, then we have just the order for you: Flo's Filet and Lobster Tail. The center cut filet is tender and juicy, and it may just be one of our favorite cuts on the Longhorn menu. We also love the fact that it's only 6 ounces, which means that we had plenty of time for the other star of the show, the lobster tail. Lobster is notoriously indulgent, which is why the addition of a lobster tail to this dish makes it so special. The lobster is served with melted butter, which highlights its light, fresh flavor. When you combine the umami, meaty flavors of the filet with the fresher, lighter taste of the lobster, it's clear why this is our favorite order when we go to Longhorn. Check out one of our newest videos right here. Plus, even more mashed videos about your favorite restaurants are coming soon. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell so you don't miss a single one.